You say you want peace, love, stability. But why do you keep going back to chaos? Why do you crave the people who hurt you, while pushing away those who actually care? Here's the terrifying truth. Part of you wants the drama, not because you're broken, but because your subconscious is still trying to finish a story that began decades ago. And it's not about them. It's about you. In this video, we're going deep into Sigmund Freud's theory of repetition compulsion, a haunting idea that explains why your heart is addicted to pain and how your past quietly scripts every toxic relationship you fall into. This won't be comfortable, but it might just wake you up. You don't fall in love with people randomly. Your mind is not choosing based on logic. It's choosing based on memory. Freud believed that we are unconsciously drawn to situations that echo unresolved traumas from childhood, not because they feel good, but because they feel familiar. Let that sink in. You're not chasing love. You're chasing recognition, the kind you never got as a child. If you grew up around emotional neglect, you'll confuse emotional distance for passion. If your parents' love was conditional, you'll chase partners who make you prove your worth. And if pain was part of how you first experienced connection, then pain becomes your definition of real. This is repetition compulsion, a subconscious attempt to master the original trauma by repeating it in the present. You're trying to win this time, but here's the trap: you never do. You just bleed. Again. And your mind convinces you this is love. But what if I told you that the traits you find irresistible are actually symptoms of your wound? Imagine two people walk into your life. One offers calm, kindness, consistency. The other, hot and cold, exciting, dangerous. Guess which one feels like home? Freud would argue that the qualities we find attractive are not objective. They're projections, based on our earliest caregivers. If you had to fight for attention as a child, emotional unavailability feels like love. If affection was weaponized, manipulation feels romantic. You're not turned on by toxicity. You are turned on by recognition. Your brain sees a familiar emotional landscape and thinks, I know how to survive here. But surviving is not the same as thriving. And if you keep confusing intensity with intimacy, you will keep falling for people who remind you of the very wounds you never healed. Now here's the twist. Your conscious mind might scream, I deserve better. But your unconscious says, this feels right. That's why you self-sabotage with the good ones. That's why stability feels boring. Because healing doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like nothing. And if your nervous system is wired for chaos, then nothing feels wrong. So what's really happening in your mind when you crave the very thing that breaks you? The answer lies in Freud's darkest discovery. There's a theory Freud introduced later in life, and it disturbed even him. He called it thanatos, the death drive. The idea that humans are not only driven by pleasure and survival, but by a deep, unconscious urge to return to a state of non-existence, to self-destruct. What does that have to do with love? Everything. When you repeatedly choose what harms you, part of you is trying to end the story, to hit the same wall again and again until you feel nothing. Not because you hate yourself, but because pain is predictable, and predictability, in a chaotic mind, feels like control. This is why some people are addicted to toxic cycles, not just out of attachment, but out of a hidden drive to end the inner war. By choosing partners who reenact old pain, you unconsciously move toward closure, even if it destroys you. And the tragedy is, you mistake that destruction for destiny. If this sounds bleak, hold on. Because Freud didn't believe we were doomed. He believed the cycle could be broken, but only through a brutal kind of honesty. Here's what Freud believed. The unconscious will rule your life until it becomes conscious. What does that mean? It means you will keep reenacting the same relationship with different people, in different bodies, wearing different faces, until you stop running the old script. Awareness is the first rupture. When you can name the pattern, it starts to loosen its grip. Think about your last heartbreak. Was it love, or was it a ritual? Were you really in love with them, or with the chance to fix something you couldn't fix before? This is not about blaming your parents. It's about freeing yourself from the prison they unintentionally built in your mind. Freud believed that our freedom begins when we confront the unconscious and make it conscious. When you look at the wound, instead of running from it. When you feel the fear of boredom and choose the boring, safe love anyway. When you stop seeking recognition from the same kind of ghost. It won't feel good. It will feel unfamiliar. But that's the point. Because healing doesn't feel like home at first. It feels like exile. Until you realize home was the place you kept getting hurt. If you've made it this far, you're not like most people. You're ready to stop lying to yourself. You want truth, even if it hurts. That's what this channel is for. So if you want more content that dares to dig deep, subscribe. Let's figure this out together. There's one final idea from Freud that might explain why this is so hard, and why most people never escape it. Let's close with that. Freud once wrote, "We are what we are because we have been what we have been." Your past doesn't just shape you, it haunts you. And it doesn't stop at memories. It echoes in your choices, your desires, your fantasies. You might not choose the same job, the same city, the same friends. But if you're not conscious, you will always choose the same pain. That's the real definition of a toxic relationship. It's not about shouting or cheating or manipulation. It's about repetition. Repetition of abandonment, of unworthiness, of emotional starvation. But it can stop, not by erasing your past, but by interrupting it. When you feel drawn to chaos, pause. Ask, what part of me is seeking this? Is it the child who was never seen? The teenager who was never loved? The adult who still believes pain is the price of being chosen? You can learn to love differently, but only if you choose to live consciously, to rewrite the story, even if it means walking away from everything that once felt like love, because maybe it never was. You don't fall for toxic people. You fall for familiar wounds. And the scariest, most liberating thing you'll ever do is stop calling it love. So let me ask you, are you brave enough to leave the story unfinished?